what we're going to work on right now is what we do when we see someone at the top of the screen and their behavior is that they are signaling. They are signaling. So we're going to just talk about that now together, and Maggie and I will demonstrate. First of all, I'm going to ask Maggie to just have a conversation with me, a brief conversation where she is signaling. And then I'm going to demonstrate a few ways which perhaps aren't so helpful in which to respond. And then we're going to just debrief a little what my response is. Does that make sense? So Maggie's going to just share something. She's not going to tell me that she's, in serious dire straits or is thinking about, making massive relationship changes. That's not the sort of thing we tend to see every day at work. We tend to see other kinds of things, and maybe I don't actually know what Maggie's going to talk about, but let's see where we go. Everyone with me? Everyone with me? Thank you. All right, Maggie. So, how's it going?
Well, pretty good. I was going to talk to you about a client issue, actually.
Oh, okay.
So, a client who I have sent many emails to, they haven't gotten back. They've asked for certain work. I've quoted on the work. I've sent lots of detail about the work, and they're just not getting back. And it's really
But have you sent emails that you think sort of escalate the urgency a little bit? Have you sent different kinds, or is it just the same email going back and forth?
I've sent about 4 emails, and I've been sensitive about, I know it's COVID time, and I know this, but you've asked for this work. But now, do you still want the work?
Wow.
And they've sent back saying, yes, we do want the work. And
gosh, how long has this been? I mean, so we haven't got the business for quite a while, I take it?
Yeah, about 4 months.
Oh, gosh.
4 months.
Well, that's a worry, isn't it? I mean, if that happens to me, I just take things in hand, in a way that you might not be yet, actually. All right, just pause for a minute. Notice what I'm doing. Maggie is signaling, and I'm doing some responses, and she's laughing because it's actually quite difficult for her while I'm doing this. Although I mean really well, I really mean well. In fact, I'm going to keep doing it, and then we're just going to pause and see for a minute. Can you just keep going for a minute, and I'll just have a few more.
So what can I say? So this is quite a significant amount of work. So I've put quite a bit of time into it. And so, I've been really, when I first spoke to him about it, he was very keen, and he knows the other work we've done, and he's very excited about it.
And so you are so good at this too. Honestly, I don't know what more the client could want. In terms of follow-up, and I've been asking him, you're doing a wonderful job, truly.
Yeah.
What more, I don't know what more anyone could do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's pause. I'm giving Maggie back a series of responses, but all of them share something. All of them share something. And what they share is there's absolutely no listening from me. Right? Nothing. Absolutely zip, zero, zilch listening. So what am I doing? Well, before we go to what I'm doing, can you just say a little bit? Maggie doesn't know what I'm going to say, so we try and, when we do this, what's it like when I do that? Can you just tell me a little bit about how you experience that?
Irritating.
Irritating.
It's a bit like I have to manage you as well as what's happening for me.
Right. Okay, so then...
I have to manage I have to deal with your response, which is in addition to my own response of my situation.
Right. Okay. So it's not actually that helpful.
No.
Right.
No, it's distracting.
It's distracting. So I wanted you to notice that even though what I'm saying now to Maggie might seem a little extreme, I want to let you know, having researched this now for years and observed many meetings, read transcripts of hundreds of hours, this is everyday commonplace. This is how we tend to talk about. So when one person signals, and it's in a normal chat, what the other person does is various helping strategies, which range from, if you're a more compliant person, reassuring, praising, supporting. If you're a more controlling person, you may go into giving advice, You'll go straight into giving advice. You may and you may even analyze it by asking questions and using logic. If you're a protecting person, you'll in fact try to avoid the conversation altogether. So you may not even want to be here. Protecting, those of us who identify with protecting, and I do very strongly protecting, I don't always find it comfortable. It's something, and so what I'll do is I'll just change the subject. I'll just change the subject, if I'm really in my protecting self. In each case, being with someone who is signaling at the top part of the screen, depending upon how strongly they're signaling about and depending upon the topic around which they are signaling, is often quite a lovely prompt of my reactivity, the observer. And why is it reactive? It's because the way I'm behaving is primarily to serve my own needs, not the person here. It's actually to serve my own needs here. Now, if I was really looking through my creative eyes, I would already see that this is not really helping Maggie. She's now having to manage me. She stops, she's taken back. I can see that in her behavior. But you know what? I'm not really noticing because my reactive self is already triggered. So as controllers, I get triggered by the problem of it that I want to fix. As a complier, I get triggered by the feelings of disharmony, the upsetness of it that I want to smooth over. And the protector in me wants to distance myself from it and potentially use logic, come from a distance and appear and give you a solution from a more superior place. In each case, being faced with someone who is in the top part of the screen is an curiously potent trigger of our own reactivity unless we are awake to it. And all of these things, none of what we're doing here has anything to do with listening. Nothing at all. I just want to act. So there is the circumstance. But if this person is working with me, I want to let you know the creative leader avoids giving solutions to people who are upset at that moment. It's not fair. They're in fact in a kind of childlike state partly. They're upset. They're anxious. They don't feel empowered. They don't see their own possibilities yet. They don't see the other options. They don't sense their own personal power. And I want them to experience that rather than me as the savior of them when they're signaling. So signaling is very important, but I want to let you know listening when they're up here is critical. And it won't take as long as you think. If you listen well, people drop down, their voice drops down, and then they get into the no problem zone, and then we can problem solve together. And then I may well give advice. I might check to see that it's reasonable to do so. But I find also that they're in a far more capable position to be able to contribute to that conversation. In fact, when we get down here, the problem solving usually becomes a set of questions. So, what do you think the problem is, Maggie, I might ask. And she would be able to give me a far more coherent, thoughtful and insightful answer if she's no longer upset, but she's in her adult self and in the no problem zone. So what I've demonstrated now is our reactive cells and what Thomas Gordon actually called roadblocks. Roadblock. It actually prevents the other person from processing what they're doing and prevents them from finding their own resourceful self in the process. It roadblocks them. So there's the roadblocking. Now I'm going to have Maggie signal again, and this time I'm going to actively listen. Now, this conversation will be a little bit contrived because I'm going to try and only actively listen. In normal conversations, you drop in a little active listening, you say a few other things, and you come back and do a little active listening. But I'm just wanting to do this so that you can see it clearly. But if you're thinking this conversation is going to seem a little contrived, it is completely contrived, and it's not exactly natural. I'm doing it for training purposes. Nevertheless, I'd like you to see what I mean by active listening. Shall we go and do that now? Yeah? Have I got permission to proceed? Yeah, thank you. Love that. Okay. Thank you, Maggie.
So, yes, so I've had this ongoing communication with this client. Well, actually, not even ongoing because I've been sending emails and they've not been responding,
Oh,
even though they've wanted the work. And even up until very recently, when I said, look, I'm just checking, things might have changed. You know, I certainly don't want to be stalking you with this proposal, but just wondering if everything's okay. How are you?
oh. So you've been feeling a little awkward about becoming maybe too pursuing at times?
Yeah.
You have felt that?
Yeah, because I've sent a number of emails and initially it was great, you know, very positive, interested, yes, we're going ahead, and yes, they've got the budget for that, and then all of a sudden, nothing.
So that's very confusing, right? So you're getting very mixed messages?
Yeah, definitely.
So you're getting mixed messages and now you're wondering how hard to push. Do I push, just go for it, but then you're nagging? But if you go too light on, that's a concern as well.
Yeah, then I've sort of dropped it, and then I think, oh, well, you know, I do need to be the one that is following up. I do think that's true. But it's almost kind of rude now. Not me. I feel like they're almost being rude.
Yeah. Oh, well, that changes the game a bit, doesn't it? Like you wondering, well, if they're being rude, then I guess you might be thinking, what now? Like, what step do I take?
Yeah, what's the next thing? Because I've sort of exhausted a number of different options, and we've been cycling back through, oh, no, I definitely want the work, you know, yes, yes, yes. And then I'm like, okay, when? Give some options for dates, and then I don't hear anything. And then we cycle back through that again. So it's, yeah.
So you've noticed this, so the conversation has become circular.
Yeah.
And now you're thinking, okay, I need to not be in that circle anymore somehow. I've got to do something. And you're not quite sure what that thing is, but you know you need to sort of break that cycle.
Well, it's interesting now, well done, because now I do think actually I do need to speak to the behaviour now, to the cycle, respectfully, but I think I do.
Oh, so actually say to the client, I've noticed this is what's happening between us.
Yes. I think that's what I need to do.
Oh.
Name it, sort of name the game in a way, and say, you know, I just say what I've said, what the process has been, and just to say,
Ah.
yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Let's pause for a minute. Okay, so you've noticing I'm listening. How was that for you?
Very good.
Was it?
Yes.
That's good, isn't it? I'm looking for feedback, but it's not just because I'm being watched by 26 people. But I don't know. I don't know what Maggie was going to talk about, so I have no idea what topic she's going to raise. But my task is to listen so deeply and see whether I can simply express her feeling or what she's dealing with and take it no further, absolutely no further than where she is, but look to see whether I can share it back. Did you notice I did not ask one question, except if I was just checking that my listening was right? So I'm not searching for answers. I'm not trying to analyze. There's no analysis. There's no praising. There's no reassurance. There's no warning. There's no ordering. There's no criticism. All of the roadblocks are gone because my only task is to sit and see whether I can understand and get into your shoes and share back what I see when I'm in your shoes. This is active listening. That's active listening. Now, I don't know whether you noticed something happened to Maggie while we did this. And I don't know whether even Maggie's aware of it. Did you? What happened to your state as you were being actively listening?
Well, and I think this is the key. I mean, obviously Paul and I do this work, but there is something quite magical in the process. Because this is a real issue, right? I'm not making this up. This is an actual issue. And I've kind of tried to come at it from that.
Great. Go.
Okay.
Just turn it up, Nick. Thanks. And
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I've had this issue, with, you know, in an ongoing way, and so yeah, just you listening to me really just helped me get to more of a solution for myself.
Yeah,
Right?
lovely.
More of myself. Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah, I noticed that too. When you started, you had more feeling about you. And then the feeling drops. And as I notice, Maggie's in the signaling zone. She's starting to drop down. And as she does that, she's resourcing her problem-solving self. Most people we talk to who signal have a very able problem-solving self, as Maggie does. But while they're signaling, they're not accessing that self. If we want to be creative leaders with people, we want to help them access their problem-solving, capable self. And we do that by simply listening, and they drop down. And now we go to the final part of this journey today, a very important part, a part that I've been actually getting you ready for since the very first few minutes of our session. And that is, if you follow here, we're going to now ask the question, what happens when we deal with behavior that is below the line? Now remember, it's we who own the problem. You've been working with what to do with behavior that's above the line. Knowing to do so, the best thing is to actively listen as the critical, most powerful tool. Knowing that as you do that, people tend to drop, become less emotional, and get into the no problem zone. But now we're going to work with this. Now, I've already been preparing you to know what to do here because, as I said before, these are 3-part I messages. Now, Dr. Thomas Gordon, who wrote Leadership Effectiveness Training some years ago, was the first person to really frame that as a 3-part I message, and others have done various versions of it. But frankly, Dr. Thomas Gordon was the original and the best at discussing and constructing and teaching the best way to be respectfully assertive. In fact, I consider 3-part I message to be the very anatomy of assertion. So what are the 3 parts? What are the 3 parts? If we look at a 3-part I message, then you'll notice that one part is always about the behavior. It's always about the behavior. So we actually we have to describe the behavior, and we have to do that in a way that's objective and non-blameful. Objective and non-blameful. So that's the first part. The second part, of course, is the part of feelings. We must be able to describe our own emotion. And this is not, I felt like hitting you, or I felt like running from the room screaming. That's not an emotion, it's an action. So this is the emotion, and it's very challenging to put this in because it's where you actually become vulnerable, because you own the problem. Their behavior has become your problem because it's threatening your needs. So now how can we explain what our problem is? We say, when you do this behavior, I feel this, and of course the third part, I feel this, and guess what? That behavior of yours has real impact on me. It has real impact on me. And we want to give the behavior person feedback on what that impact is. And of course, we want to make it as much as possible tangible impact. What's the tangible impact? These are the 3 parts of the I message. And the third is a tangible impact. Now, when you deliver it, it doesn't matter what order. It's very helpful to give the 3 parts if you can. This is an absolute essential inclusion. This lets them know that it actually means something to you. If you remove the emotion, then they might be tempted to think it's all just academic and you don't really care, but you do, you have a feeling about it. And this makes it plain how you are being impacted in case they're wondering and they probably don't know until you tell them. And how can you tell them that? By, in particular, you can answer the question and include, what does it compel me to do that I don't want to do? Or what does it oblige me to do that I would rather not do? That I would rather not do. And these are the three parts of the iMessage. They are, honestly, if I can just encourage you to hold true to this template, then your ability to remain and to to be assertive in places where you would not have been assertive can really elevate. You can, in fact, use this as your creative leader self. You can use it whether you're building a team by fostering team play or collaboration when someone's doing something that is inconsistent with your expectations of them. You can actually do it in achieving and giving people a clear message when they're not being as focused on the strategy or the results. Of course, when coming to authenticity, this is the anatomy of being courageously authentic. Raising something when you know it feels a little edgy to do it, where part of you would rather either avoid it altogether, smooth over it, or just blow their head off with your irritation. Just tell them, forget the iMessage and say, listen, will you just do this and get on with it? And I know maybe it might sound exaggerated, but in effect, many of us, especially in positions of management, do that. And we do that because we step and leapfrog the step of using an iMessage. And as a result, there's no learning in the conversation and there's no growth. So this is the three-part iMessage. So maybe I might ask Maggie to come in and I'll just demo sending a three-part iMessage so you can hear it. I have lots of examples of sending iMessages throughout, I remember once, just while Maggie comes in, I remember once when I was looking outside my place out the front door, I remembered there was this white fluff all over the front garden. And I thought, what is that fluff? What is that fluff? And yes, you can come in, Maggie, while I'm just telling the story. And I got out and I realized that we'd left this woolen overlay sheet out in the front door, in the front yard. And this dog had come from somewhere in the street and just ripped the bejesus out of it and left, fluff all over it. And I had to walk down the street. I'm thinking, what's going on? And then I saw the dog and still had a little bit of fluff just coming out of it. It was obviously the dog, right? And then I realized the dog was associated with, I don't know whether you know the story, Maggie. I realized the dog was associated with a carpenter who was actually building a house 3 doors down on the street. And so I was walking down the street. I had this woolen thing. And I went down there and I thought, this is time for an iMessage. This is time for an iMessage. And I just said to him something like, hey, what I believe has happened is your dog has taken our woolen overlay sheet and ripped it up, left parts over the front door, which is a real concern to me because it was expensive. It actually cost $60 and we use it to overlay a part of our a particular part of the house where our small child lays. So it's a problem for me. So I just said that. It was my three-part iMessage. I remember this moment especially because he looked at me. He was a carpenter, a kind of, rough and tough kind of guy. And he just went, really? And then he turned over and he went to his ute. He opened the door and he reached in. I literally thought he was going to take out a large spanner with a big head and come walking at me with it. But he didn't. He just came out and he pulled out and he had his wallet with him. And he walked towards me and he said, how much did you say it was? I said, $60. He goes, fair enough. And he took $60 out and he gave it to me. And then I did the wisest thing I could possibly think of at that time, and that was get out of there quickly. Leave. I wasn't there to become his friend. I didn't want to become overly effusive. I just said, thank you, I really appreciate that, and I left. But I have a feeling it would have been different if I'd said something a bit like, I've noticed your dog down here ripping the shit out of my stuff. You know what I mean? He's just wandering up and down the it's like there's no owner at all here. I mean, I could, if I'd really been charged, I would have brought my reactive self. And I can promise you that he would not have got his wallet out. So iMessages can be very powerful in how they're delivered. So, hey Maggie, do you want to come and join me? I'm going to send an iMessage to Maggie. You'll just respond really easily to start with. And I'll say something like, Maggie, when I notice that there's been weeks go by before you've followed up with the client, I get really concerned. You know, because then I feel compelled to have to follow up with you about what's happening. So you haven't followed up with the client, but you also haven't told me about it. So, and what's going on. And so I get really worried by that. And then I feel compelled to have to follow up with you about the client, which is frankly something I'd rather not be doing. I have my own clients to follow up with. And I just wanted to let you know that.
Well, do you want me to signal?
No. I'm going to ask her to give me a really nice, well-mannered response to start with. All right? Just go for that first.
Okay.
Just breathe.
Yes, I see. I get that. I mean, for you, you've got your own work that you're thinking about managing, and then I come to you with this scenario, and it sounds like you feel like you have to actually manage that as well.
Yeah.
Which creates stress for you.
Yeah.
And you're wondering what's going on. Like, if I'm not managing this, what does that mean?
So let's pause. What Maggie's doing is extremely skillful and probably not what... She's actually feeding back to me my iMessage, right? So that's pretty cute. And so that's really something. And we can only aspire to do that if someone might actually confront you with an iMessage, is to actually actively listen back to them with your iMessage. So thank you. So Maggie, I'm having to initiate this. I've initiated now this conversation with you on a couple of occasions about what's happening with this client. And I've noticed you haven't got back to them in between my times. And I guess to be honest, I'm feeling a little frustrated by that because I feel like it's me who has to take the initiative and be proactive about doing it, following up with you. And it sort of prevents me from realizing, I think, quite possibly some of our revenue goals as well. And, you know, it leaves me not feeling so good. How would you like to respond to that? You can now be defensive. Yeah.
Don't you know what I'm doing? Like, don't you see how much I've got on my plate at the moment? And I mean, I'm also responding to some of your clients as well, because you know, it's busy at the moment. It's, even though this is all happening with COVID, there is a lot of things that are going on. So I feel like I'm actually managing all of the back end of that. And I mean, why aren't you just focusing on what you need to do? Why are you kind of coming to me now and talking to me about that?
Wow, okay. So me raising this feels a little bit hard-edged for you. I can see that. Like,
yeah,
I'm missing the fact that you're really busy and that you're not slacking around. You've got lots to go on. And in fact, you're even doing some of the stuff behind my work, keeping me going. So it probably lands a bit heavy-handed, me coming and talking with you about this particular client. Is that right? Yeah. So at the same time, I guess what I need to do is still raise with you my concern that we obviously have a client who's not responding, but it's me that's initiating a conversation with you. And I'm a little concerned with that because I think if I forget, then maybe we won't end up talking about it. And that worries me a little bit. How would you like to respond to that?
Yes, I see that. I mean, I don't really, I'm thinking I'm managing it. I don't really need to update you so often. So I'm just going to manage it. And if I need help from you, I'll come and speak to you. Or if I think we need more of a sort of team approach, then I'll come and speak to you about it.
Yeah, okay. So you're thinking I should really just be leaving it in your ballpark?
Yes.
And not be saying anything about it?
Probably, because I'm going to come to you if I need to clarify anything or speak to you about any of that.
Okay, I get that. And at the same time, I nevertheless, rightly or wrongly, feel like I would like to be updated. And maybe more frequently than what you might like to do.
Sure.
And
I get
if
that.
I'm honest, I feel like I would still like that, and when I don't get it, I feel a little bit worried. And then because I think I might forget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that okay?
Yep.
So what do you think we should do then?
Well, I think then when I contact them, I just will send you an email afterwards saying I've contacted, this is the response, or forward the email to you.
Oh, well, that would work. Yeah, that would be great with me. Yeah, that's hopefully not, it doesn't, like it's not going to cost you too much, but it would meet my need.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, let's pause. Let's pause. Okay, so I know we don't have much time, but I'm going to draw a graph of that interaction.
Do you want me to go?
I think you could probably stay here. You see, what we have is me, in the first place, sending an iMessage, but the heat rises as she gets defensive. Then, once I've sent my iMessage and I notice the heat is up, then I change strategy and I actively listen a little, just a couple of times. But did you notice what I did after that? This is the really critical part. I actually then resent my iMessage, but there was still some heat, just a little bit of heat, to which I actively responded once again and brought her right down, and then I resent that message once again. So I resent my message, or I actively listened. And this is what Thomas Gordon said, the Thomas Gordon genius called shifting gears. He said that as the heat rises, do not keep sending your iMessage. Actively listen so as to drop the heat. Do not problem solve. Do not try to fix their problem. Just actively listen. Then resend your iMessage to less heat, and again if you need to. And in each case, we move from defensiveness out to cooperation. And I want to let you know, this is the quintessential tool for creative leadership and in interpersonal skills. If you can send your iMessage, then actively listen and resend, then you're shifting gears. You need quite a different energy to do that than you do this. But if you can move your energy, you'll move from defensiveness to cooperation. Do not fall into the trap of trying to solve their problem. Just listen. Then resend. You are sending to different ears. You're sending it to different ears if you actively listen. You move from defensiveness to cooperation. This is what I want to encourage you to practice and try. This is what I'd like you to do. Your homework is to actually generate iMessages for scenarios where people are doing things which are below your bottom line, to practice sending one in a place where you think it's safe to practice, and actively listen if you need to. In some cases, you won't need to. And so when I first sent that message to Maggie, it was just fine. And I'd suggest it's well over 50% of the time that you don't need to shift gears. But in some cases, you will. This is the challenge. This is the genius of Thomas Gordon. And this is creative leadership. This is moving out of one's reactivity, being truly creative, and having the courageous conversations we need to with our team with our colleagues. And this is what I want to leave with you today.